allow enough time. If we have time, we might extend this a little bit, but please keep your questions brief. And I do want to point out that Becky did bring her card, and her information is on the back of her handout. So if your question is not answered, I believe Becky will be receptive to receive any questions you may have. So take it away, Becky.
Thank you. I forgot one thing because I didn't put it on the sheet. Good point. HARO. Anybody familiar with this? It is.
What?
Do you know what it is?
Yes.
You know what it stands for?
Yeah, it's a service that you get daily emails from a variety of reporters looking for information, for story, content experts. They're looking for somebody to come forward. And I have a friend who I was able to connect and get a story in the New York Times that way. So once you get on it, you can see the different articles, and it's a free service that is run. So it's great. I really enjoy it. I get 3 a day.
3 a day. HARO stands for Help a Reporter Out. The founder is Steve Harrison. He knows his stuff. And if you forget it, just jot down HARO and Google it, and when you get back home, and you'll be able to find it. It's an email service. It's broken down by different industries. Some of the requests you can read quickly and realize they're oddball, and others you realize this is something to which I want to reply. Thanks. That was my forgotten tidbit. What can I help you? Or, pardon me, Mr. Gramerian, with what can I help you? Yes.
In your career, in your profession and job, how much impact has all of this media coverage provided you in terms of growing your business or your reach?
Great question. At this point, somewhat indirect. When the News and Observer article appeared, within 2 hours, I did have a woman call and ask me directly for some coaching help. The irony is that's not the part of the business I really want to develop. It was a short-term contract. I met with her 3 times, helped her through some transition points, and that was great. I would say at this point it's a bit more indirect. However, I can say that one media opportunity has led to another media opportunity. But I right now I'm not directly relating it to dollars in the bank. Yes, Chris?
Becky, I'm looking to establish myself as a trusted, credible person in the credit card processing industry in my town of Gaston County.
Okay.
And for someone that's looking to do that locally, do you have any experience, tips, or suggestions for a local market? I've had some interactions with the Gaston Gazette, met a few of the people that the leadership program I'm a part of, and it seemed a lot easier because they get emails. They just like you said, they're hungry for stuff. Have you had any experience in getting into local? And is that easier for a person to penetrate a local media group rather than get some national publicity?
It can be, but sometimes a prophet is not appreciated in his or her country. So don't just assume that the local people are interested in the local boy. I would keep my eyes open to who owns the Gaston Gazette. Are they owned by a larger entity? Is there a way that you can then replicate that out to a bigger source? You might find out from that reporter the people that he or she finds credible and start tracking them, seeing how you can take this one article and leverage that out to a larger group.
Use it as mileage.
Use it as mileage, use it as leverage. And slap it on everything. I can't tell you how important branding is. As a matter of fact, I am changing the name of my business, which has been Real Life Communication since 2006, and that's Hunky Dory. What I created is a process called After the Shock that helps individuals and organizations move from reaction to resilience. Guess what my new company is?
After the shock.
After the shock. I realized people didn't give a fig about real life communication. I say after the shock, and I get what one of my marketing friends calls is a head nod. That means people have some vague idea what you're about in 3 words. So, real life communication, and within 2 weeks will be After the Shock LLC. You want to brand yourself with whether it's the name of your work or a word or a phrase as much as possible. And it helps scares people, what causes them concern, or what their burning question might be about that industry. And for lack of a better term, make it your shtick.
Thank you.
Jake?
Do we have time?
One more? Yeah. One more.
Okay. The one time that I was interviewed on television, it was from the Center for Science and the Public Interest, the people that found out that movie theater popcorn is bad for you. And I was the corporate dietitian at Denny's at the time. They interviewed me for over 2 hours, and there was obvious bias that they wanted to create and make it a very controversial topic. Whenever it came down to what actually got put on television, it was 5 seconds of me, and they asked, why do people eat this stuff? And my comment was, it tastes great.
Yep.
After 2 hours, that's what they took out of it. How can we have a little bit more control over what actually gets put in media or on tape in broadcast?
Ladies and gentlemen, my short answer to Jamie's well-posed story and question is, you can't. That's the bottom line of it. That's the gamble that you take when you put yourself out that way. Then take Bert's quick question, because his hand was up simultaneously with Jamie.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, you said something about find material that supports your hashtag, and I thought that was great, but then a thought came to my mind. Okay, what about finding material that your hashtag supports?
Ah.
And and it's a question and or a question and a question.
I think the key point, Bert, is in the word material. You become the hub of your topic area. And if you think of it as those spokes of whether you're creating it, you're finding it, you are generating it. The ultimate point is when anyone thinks about you, they think about this topic area. And however the direction flows within all of that becomes inconsequential. Does that help?
Yes, yes, yes.
Final point, if I may, about this story. It goes back to some of the things our mamas taught us. The first was show up. Last fall, I went to a free workshop that the News and Observer sponsored with breakfast, because I was willing to get there early and to put on my party clothes and show up at 7 o'clock in the morning in downtown Raleigh. It was on using social media in business. Show up. Point 2, say thank you. At the end of the workshop, instead of dashing out the door like 95% of the people did, I stuck around and I thanked the people who hosted it and I thanked the panelists who were there. One of the people I thanked was Virginia Bridges, the reporter who covers this part of the small business work for the News and Observer. She whipped out her little pad, she took down my name, took down the name of my business, and asked me a question or two, and I was out the door. The next day, the News and Observer ran a story about their own workshop, and right in the center of it was a picture of me sipping coffee, because they were highlighting that this was a comfortable, casual time they had offered for everybody. I thought, hey, this is pretty cool. I show up for a free workshop, get breakfast, get my picture and the name of my business in the paper. 2 weeks later, the editor for that section of the paper sent out a generic email to a number of us who had been there and said, this is our question of the week. We'll pick 6 answers to put in a little insert in the small business section. I worked very hard to create a 2-sentence answer that was direct to the point that it appeared she wanted, and it was one of the ones that got done. So now here's my official picture in the paper, you know, the headshot, and my answer. I mean, wow, we're doing well. I show up, I say thank you. Then I sent a follow-up thank you email to both the editor and to Virginia Bridges, the original woman whom I talked to. That was it. Months go by, and I get a phone call from Virginia Bridges saying, I remembered a thing or two about your story. Could I interview you for next week's section? What was I gonna say? She took that interview on the phone, but part of the reason, and this is where my point goes to the lack of control. She wanted a picture of me in action. That particular week, the only action I had going on was emceeing an event. But I also wanted to be able to highlight other people, and that's very important. It doesn't always have to be on you. So this picture is made with me. If you look at it carefully, I look like I've eaten a persimmon. People don't get good pictures of you if you are talking. It's just almost impossible. But she wanted a true action shot. So here I am with my funny little whatever expression as it was, emceeing a program. But I made sure it was a professional women's group, and I made sure she met other women within that meeting. The following week, she had one of those other women for her backstory, and had quotes from a half a dozen people. Do you think we're in a good place? The final piece of that is sometimes you have no way of knowing the background story of the interviewer. What is their backstory? As I found out after all of this was over, she has a particular personal passion and reason to be running a story separate from all of this on caregiving. Guess who she's planning to interview for that story? You have control over some things, you don't have control over others. But if you will allow yourselves a time of vulnerability, a time of planned boldness, and just have a little fun with it. Show up, say thank you, and get to know people. Chances are your story is going to become the important story for somebody.